Hi, welcome back to You Heard It From a CFP, episode 61 of You Heard It From a CFP. My name is Matthew Coyle. I am the Director of Financial Planning here at Advanced Capital Group in snowy and icy Minneapolis. Very snowy winter this year, snowier than most. Shot some new intro footage for the videos the other day. I realized I was still using the autumn stuff, which is really pretty, but times change, seasons change, and we must use new footage. So I got out and did that. Obviously, you can see I'm dressed for winter time today. It is chilly. Let's talk about your cash in episode 61, where to keep it, and let's do that right now. Thanks. Okay, today we are talking about cash on episode 61, and I want to start this episode just by talking about what I call hard stop purchases. Hard stop purchases, and I've talked to my clients many times about this. If you have a need coming up in the next, let's say, 3 years or less, maybe you've got a big debt repayment coming up or a balloon payment, maybe you're buying a home, saving for a home in the next 2 to 3 years. That money absolutely, under no circumstances, can be put in the stock market. You can only have money in the stock market. I say that 3 to 5 years or out. Under 3 years, no, you cannot have that money in the stock market. As the last 12 to 16, maybe 18 months have shown you, that money should not be in the market. No exceptions whatsoever. So where can you put money in the interim that will actually give you a return? And I get this question a lot from people, especially at the end of the year and the beginning of the year, when people are kind of reviewing their goals, looking at what they've accomplished, what they've got coming up, whatever. So we're going to talk about 4 areas that I think are good places to keep short-term cash. And I'll probably throw a 5th one in there, but I can talk about that in a second. 4 places for sure that you should be keeping short-term cash that you need in under 3 years, especially under 3 years, especially under like 2 years or under a year. They are high-yield savings, CDs, short-term U.S. Treasuries, and money market funds. Let's talk about the pros and cons of each one of those 4. They're a little different, a little different rules, a little different pros and cons. And I'll probably throw a 5th one in there, but I'll get to that after I'm done. So let's talk about these first 4, and then we'll go from there. Okay, 4 places to store your cash that I think are worthwhile if you have a hard stop purchase coming up in the next, let's say, under 3 years. If you have a hard stop purchase coming up in the next year, you may want to consider the first option, which is, of course, high yield savings accounts. We'll start there. That is the simplest of all the options. Basically, it's just like it sounds. It's a high yield bank account that usually is subject to FDIC insurance, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, up to $250,000 per guarantor, per depositor. And basically, they're very simple. Sometimes if you have too many transactions going in and out, you could be subject to a fee, and usually the interest you get is taxable because they're in taxable bank accounts. But a high interest savings account can certainly be a good option to keep your cash if you can get a good rate and meet the minimum balance requirements. So be aware of that. Pros of these things, good yields. The money's always accessible. You take on almost no risk at all to put your money there. And the cons, certainly not a great place to keep money long term. It's not going to keep pace with inflation, most likely. Usually, if you have too many transactions, like I said, there could be a fee, so make sure you understand that. But basically, it's a cheap, easy, accessible way to keep your money liquid up until the purchase when you need it, and you will earn an attractive rate relative to other bank rates for having something that is basically no risk. So a high yield savings with very little risk is a good place to go for the first year of needing a cash need. Now beyond that, you move into things like CDs, short-term U.S. Treasuries, money market funds, and we'll talk about those now. Okay, moving on to our next option, that's CDs or certificates of deposit. Now, in this particular case, CDs, and this is not the greatest market for CDs right now as I shoot this, which is January 23rd. This is not a great market for CDs right now relative to other things, and I'll explain that in a second. But what a CD is and why it might work for you. A certificate of deposit, or CD, issued by banks and other brokers around the country. You can lock your money up for a certain period of time. A lot of times it's a year or similar, maybe 18 months. And your money is promised a certain rate for a certain time. That's the pro. Of course, very little risk. Of course, FDIC insurance applies. However, the negative side of a CD is that right now they're not very attractive as far as rates relative to other investments, perhaps, especially given the fact you have to lock your money up. And if you have to get out of them early, you will incur a fee. So what I would say right now is be very careful when you put money into a CD. It's easy to put them in. It's very difficult to get them out if you have to. You may be looking at other options in that case if you need a CD. However, CDs can be useful if you absolutely know you're not going to need that money for the next, say, year or two, or maybe 18 months, I don't know, whatever. They might be a good option for you if you want to lock that money up. However, right now with an inverted yield curve, meaning that short rates are higher than long rates, CD is probably not the best option right now. You might be looking at other options, which I'll cover in just a second. But certificates of deposit, the pros are they're guaranteed. FDIC insurance applies. You're going to get the rate they say you're going to get. They're very, very safe. And once the time period has elapsed, you're going to have your money out with no fee and no cost at all. So very simple, very easy option. But again, be aware of the lockup periods and be aware of the fact that it might not be the best option in this current environment. All right, next up, money market funds. Now, money market funds are a little different from cash accounts or CDs. They are technically a security. They are funds that are invested in very highly liquid, very short-term securities. So they are a security. They are subject to a tiny little bit of market risk, okay? But they are basically funds that are invested in very, very, very short-term securities like highly liquid, near-term cash-like instruments. You see a lot of high credit rating bonds and these type of things, short-term bonds, U.S. Treasuries. And the money market fund invests in those securities and those short-term debt instruments. Then they are securities, and basically promises the investor to maintain $1 per share, although it's not guaranteed, $1 per share investment on the fund, and then a cash yield on top of that. So money market funds will typically yield a little bit better, especially in this environment, than CDs or high yield savings accounts, although they do have a slight, very slight, level of market risk because they are investing in very short-term bonds and very short-term securities. However, unless the markets are under serious duress, and I mean serious duress, you will typically rarely ever see a money market fund break that $1 per share mark. So very, very little market risk, although there is some. No FDIC insurance, but typically a little higher yield on your cash. So if you would like a list of money market securities, you just want to jump online, maybe do some research, or you can reach out to us. There are money market funds that we do use on a regular basis for the appropriate usage. So money market funds a little bit better as far as rate. A great place to keep short-term cash, especially if you may not know if you're going to need it within the next 6 months, a year. Maybe you just want to have some emergency savings on hand and you don't want to lock it up into a CD. Totally understandable. Money market funds can be a very, very good use for this. But again, no deposit insurance necessarily from the FDIC and a very, very, very tiny bit of market risk to go along with that. Okay, next up, short-term U.S. Treasury bills. Now, this is something that we've been doing a lot of lately in the past year just because of the way the market is now. It's not a good idea every time, okay, but in this particular market where short-term rates are higher than longer-term rates, what we've been doing a lot of lately is short-term U.S. Treasury bills, and you, of course, can do the same. Now, the difference between this and, say, like a money market fund or an FDIC-insured account, right, these are actual Treasury notes, Treasury bills, IOUs, from the U.S. government that mature in a year or less, right? They're Treasury bills, and typically you can get them on a monthly maturing basis. If you have an advisor that can do this, what we'll typically do is build a little ladder, and we'll have them maturing each month. They are guaranteed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, not the FDIC and not any other entity, okay? But if you have the means and the advisor to do it, you can purchase short-term U.S. Treasury bills that mature every month. And right now the rates can vary. I mean, I think they're from 4 to 5% right now, typically. But they are individual bonds and individual securities, so you do have some market risk, very, very small. However, it is a good option if you have some short-term cash needs and you don't want to lock up into a CD. Maybe you don't want to use a money market fund for whatever reason, I don't know. But typically there are a lot of Treasury bills inside money market funds. But you can also get pretty good yields on Treasury bills if you buy them individually. You have to have an advisor that can do it. And you have to have an account where you can hold them, like a brokerage account. It can't be a bank account. But if you have a brokerage account, an advisor that knows what they're doing, and a place to buy them, you can buy short-term U.S. Treasury bills and get a fairly attractive yield, especially in today's environment where short-term rates are higher than long-term rates. So there's another option for you, U.S. Treasury bills maturing on a monthly basis. Okay, so those are 4 places you could consider putting short-term cash if you need to in this market. And they are, to recap, high yield savings, CDs, money market funds, and short-term monthly maturing U.S. Treasury bills. Now, I did promise you a fifth idea, and this is more if it fits into your current financial plan. Okay, this isn't right for everybody, so full disclosure. If you have an existing whole life insurance policy, for example, that is ideally, let's say, mature, and you can add additional money to it without violating IRS requirements, then if we remember, of course, from previous videos how these cash values grow, and I'll put that right there, they are one of the only places as far as places to put cash that is guaranteed to get more efficient the longer you own it, because it does have a maturity date. And it does have to be the right kind of whole life insurance policy. Reach out to me if you want to have questions on that or want to know how that works. But basically, if you have an existing policy and you've got cash in there and you want to put more cash in there and it fits into your goals and your financial plan, you have my full blessing to do it. I do it. My wife does it. I have clients that do it. It's not right for everybody, but again, if you have questions, reach out. But an existing whole life insurance policy or plan can be an excellent place to put long-term cash because they're investing in the same things that money market funds invested in, or it's very similar dynamic. So with that being said, again, check with your advisor if you work with one, check with us if you don't, check with us in general if you have questions. But those 5 places: high yield savings, CDs, money market funds, short-term monthly maturing U.S. Treasury bills, and existing whole life insurance plans, if you have one, can be an excellent place to put short-term cash. I think I'll leave it with that. Maybe I'll go outside and shovel or something because it might even be snowing again. I hope you're well. Again, your most valuable asset is your time. Take care of yours. Thank you for sharing yours with me, and I will catch up with you next time, which will probably be in a couple weeks. So take care. Thanks.